Ghost in the Night with Phil Sams.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Ghost in the Night, a hauntings and paranormal podcast. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to check out this podcast. Today, we're going to continue the conversation of how to investigate the paranormal. This will be part 2. The first episode, if you missed it, be sure to head back and check that out. But the first one, I talked about knowing yourself, knowing why you want to get into the paranormal. Why are you interested? What is your motivation to seek these answers or answer these questions that the paranormal problem presents us? But we're going to keep with this episode, or part 2 is going to keep with that theme. We're still going to look inward at myself, at yourself, on why you're investigating, why you're looking to do this, and how to better prepare you for the actual investigation or actually dealing with the paranormal. That is what I wanted to really focus in on, your mental mindset. And mindset is key to the paranormal. And I want to do that in a very different kind of way. I want to tell a story about the most terrifying, I would say, experience I had when it comes to the paranormal. I recently got asked this question, and I thought it was a great way to, I wanted to share the question and even throw it out to you guys. So if you want to actually, tell me the most terrifying or the scariest experience you've had, whether it be on an investigation or be in your own home while you're alone or whatever, be sure to do that via email at gitnpodcast@gmail.com, or just hit me up on social media. Twitter is the best way. Handles at night_ghost. Let me know, and hope maybe I could give you some validation, or we can just have a conversation about your experiences and how it affected you. What did you take from it? But like I said, I recently was asked this question, and I really started thinking about, because I've had a lot of experiences, but there's two experiences that I did have that come to mind when somebody asks what is the scariest situation I was ever in. But the one I want to talk about tonight is important because I think it really goes to mindset, and that is what I want to talk about. Mindset. So let me start with that story. Now, just for those of you who are new to the podcast, I've lived in houses that have had activity most of my life. Just about every place, probably 90% of the homes that I've lived in, have had some sort of paranormal or some kind of spirit or something unexplainable has happened. Whether you want to classify it as paranormal or a ghost or whatever, strange things have occurred. So you need to keep that in mind a little bit. But back in 2010, I was going through a divorce, and she had moved out. The kids were no longer living in the home, just like any kind of divorce situation. The divorce was not finalized yet, but we were in the process of it. We were separated and filed and all that happy stuff. So I was home alone. I was living alone in the same house, and there had been activity in that home anyway. So one night I come home from work, and just a typical night. And let me give you a little bit of a backstory. I'm an only child. I do enjoy being alone at times. There are certain times where I'm an introvert by nature, which, it's not that I'm shy or don't want to talk to people. It's that I am more comfortable. I'm comfortable alone. I sometimes find being in crowds exhausting. And when I want to charge my batteries or relax, I like to be alone. So there are times, even to this day, and throughout my entire life, that I like quiet time. I like to be alone, to think about things and, get inside my head and work out my issues. So as tough as this time period was for me, I did like that aspect of it. And anybody who has went through a divorce or is currently going through a divorce, it's not easy. It's probably the worst time in your life, just for the mere fact your life is drastically changing. And that's whether you want the divorce, whether you filed for the divorce, or somebody, your partner, had wanted the or filed for the divorce. It's stressful for all parties involved because it's a life change. You're getting outside your norm or what you are used to. So, and I was in that position, and I was, not that I was happy, but I did enjoy, I liked the quiet. I liked being alone to just introspect and think about things. I found that valuable to a certain extent. So I get home from work, and, I eat dinner, and I am just laying on the couch, relaxing, thinking about the day, naturally thinking about what I'm going through, how things are going to change, how I'm going to handle these situations, and handle the upcoming situations. And it wasn't a pleasant divorce by any stretch, but it wasn't the worst nightmarish story that you could think of. There was some animosity there, but, all in all, I mean, there was definitely some things happening that did not put me in a good place, and that's going to be critical toward the end of this episode when I tie it all in together. But bottom line, I was okay to a certain extent. I miss my family. I miss the kids tremendously, and it broke my heart to be away from them. So I wasn't truly happy, but, I was getting that quiet time that sometimes I do need and do want at times. So I'm laying there, just finished dinner. Probably at that time, definitely was probably a Subway sandwich or some sort of fast food, because, whenever you go through a divorce, things get separated and things get halved, and you don't necessarily always have everything you're used to having. So it was a lot of fast food, a lot of things like Subway, and a lot of pizza boxes. So I was laying there, just finished watching television, and for you can't hold me to this. For some reason, I'm pretty sure there was probably, this is like 2010, so still Ghost Adventures was blowing up at that time. Ghost Hunters was still on the air. So I want to think it might have been one of those. It was right around Halloween, so it might have even been one of those Halloween specials was on. So I was watching it. I'm just laying there, and the way the living room was set up, the TV was on the wall, the couch was pretty much perpendicular up against the sidewall, and I was laying looking at the television, but, looking essentially just past, over my feet, essentially looking at the television. And to the left of the television, from my vantage point, the hallway going back to bedrooms and other rooms was off to the left. So I'm laying there watching television, and like I said, pretty sure it was probably a Ghost Hunters um, live special. I think, because, like I said, it was right around Halloween. If my memory is correct and it's, working properly, which with elderly years that's not necessarily always the case. But I was laying there watching it, and I was like, relaxing, not in a particularly bad mood, just tired from work. The dog was, we had a little, at that time, well, I still have her, a little Chihuahua. Actually, I had two dogs. One dog, the big Basset Hound, was laying on the floor next to me. I was petting him with the left hand. The little Chihuahua that I bought for my youngest daughter, out of, let's be honest, guilt for the ending of the marriage. And the dog stayed with me because her mother did not want the dog in that house or her new home. So she stayed with me. So she was laying on my stomach. I'm laying there 15, 20 minutes, wide awake, not falling asleep in any way, shape, or form. But I hear off down the hallway a creak. And I sat there, I laid there, and I was like, okay, that's interesting. And it was a slow creak. And immediately I realized it's a door. The door was either opening or closing. At that time, I didn't know which it was. And I was pretty sure from The distance that it sounded like it was, I knew it was my youngest, the room that used to be my youngest daughter's room, which, on a side note, was my original studio for when I started the podcast, 2 years ago. But I said, okay, that's my daughter's door open, and it just kept going, and it was a slow creak, like, and then it hit the base or the latch system or the door catch, and it stopped. So I sat there for a minute, said, okay, let's go see what's going on. Now, like I said, was back in 2010, was not an investigator at all. I had no aspirations of being a paranormal investigator. Had no aspirations of having a paranormal podcast. I experienced these things, and this was just par for the course for me. So I wasn't initially freaked out. Overly freaked out is a better way of putting it. I was like, whenever something happens like that and you're alone in the house, your heart rate does rise. I don't care who you are. It does elevate a little bit. So I got up, moved the dogs, and started walking uh, towards the hallway. And I looked back. The dogs were not following me. And, immediately I was like, okay, now this is kind of weird because generally, the dogs, wherever I went in the house, I had two dogs, behind me at all times. Whether I was going to the bathroom and fridge or walking out the door, they were following me right behind me at all times. So I looked back, like I said, nothing, the dogs weren't coming. So I continued forward, and that room, my daughter's room at that time, was, it's just the first door you come to. And I looked at it, it was closed. There was no lights on. The hallway light was not on, but the hallway was lit from the light in the living room. And I put my hand on the doorknob. It wasn't completely shut. It was still cracked open. Like I said, there was no light on. And just a feeling of dread came over me. I was, starting to sweat a little bit. I was nervous to open the door because I didn't know what was behind this door. And I opened the door, and as I was reaching to turn the light on, the dread just kept building and building and building, and I didn't know what I was going to do when I turned the light on, what I was going to see or what was going to be in that room. I flipped the light on and nothing. The only scary thing in that room was the horrible, ugly pink walls that I had painted for her and a bunch of stuffed animals. That was it. Nothing there. I kind of looked in the closet, looked around, looked to see if anything was moved around. Nothing. So immediately you would think you would start calming down. You would start, that release of not finding anything. Your heartbeat would start leveling out. You would start calming down and kind of go back to normal. But what was weird and out of characteristic for me was that I was still elevating. I was still getting more amped up. I was still, jumpy. I was starting, like I said, I was starting to sweat. I didn't know what was going on. I backed out of the room. I was legitimately scared. That is my memory of it, the feeling that I had, even though I knew nothing was there. That door closed on its own. So as I'm backing out and I'm literally backing back down the hallway with my eyes focused down the rest of the hallway and to the other room that was down there, and then on that door, just backing my way back into the living room. And I got back on the couch and I was just shaking. I didn't know what to think. This was just a benign experience. I had experienced something to that effect, doors opening and closing the whole time. And so I tried to compose myself. And I was like, okay, it was a little cooler. I think, the air was probably, or not the air, the heat was probably on because, like I said, it was late in October. And here in Ohio, it can be fairly cold at times. It could be 80 or it could be, 30 here in Ohio. It just depends on what day it is. I remember it being kind of cold at the time because I'm pretty sure I was in a sweatshirt and jeans. So I immediately paid attention to see if the heat was running. Because sometimes that when the heat turns on, the suction of sucking the air to blow out can cause doors to open, can cause doors to move or close, which is very possible, and that does explain a lot at times. So I, sat there, listened to see if the air was running or the heat was running, was not running. So the rational side of me said, okay, maybe the heat was running and I just didn't notice it or it just kicked on real quick. So I said, let me go back to the room. So I got up, walked back to the room, opened the door like I was figured it was at the time, and went back to the living room, sat on the couch, and kind of waited for the heat to kick on again. Didn't have to wait too long, 10, 15 minutes probably. The heat kicked on, and I perked up and listened. Door didn't move. So at this point, I kind of started calming down a little bit at this point. But soon as, because I convinced myself, as soon as that heat kicks on, that it's going to, suck the air pressure and the door is going to close and case closed. It was just my imagination, or there was a rational explanation for what had just happened. And I didn't have to worry about a spirit or a ghost or anything, messing with me that night. When nothing happened, when the heat kicked on again, my heart rate immediately started pounding. Anxiety just started rushing over me. I mean, to the point where I was almost in tears. And I'm a grown ass man. That's not me. That's not how I react to that situation. I've had these experiences my entire life. I've never had this kind of reaction, this kind of emotion based on a possible paranormal experience. And I was conscious of that, and I was like, why am I freaking out here? And it lasted all night. It actually lasted into the next day. I don't want to say was having anxiety attacks, but it was I was nervous. I was amped up. I was scared I was scared. Even that night, I didn't sleep that night at all. The dogs weren't acting crazy or weird to a certain extent. I mean, they were not quite as playful and upbeat as they normally are, but they were kind of just chill. They were just there. It wasn't like they were on edge or just sitting and staring down the hallway barking, but they weren't their normal selves. Now, I'm not going to say that is them sensing something. That is, they were sensing something. They were probably sensing my anxiety and my fear, and it kind of calmed them down and made them not their playful self. But it wasn't proof of anything. So the more I thought about this, and I've analyzed this scenario in my head for years, and when I got into the paranormal, I still hadn't come up with a rational explanation for that particular event and my particular reaction to that. Because a couple days later, or not a couple days, later on, probably the next year, I've told this story on previous episodes. I actually was laying in bed, and at the time, I had moved my bedroom to that bed. I'd kind of, made a bed there, kind of an office. I had a bed in there after, I kind of cleaned out the room a little bit. So I was actually sleeping in that room one night, and I got pulled, I was laying on my right side, and something yanked me to my back. I didn't get that freaked out. I didn't have the same reaction, which was weird. So, like I said, I've kind of pondered over my reaction to that for years, and I think I finally have come to one conclusion, and the reason or two possible reasons for that. and they do kind of tie into each other, and it goes to mindset. Now, like I said, going through divorce was not in a great place. Um, things, you know, I was stressed. The uncertainty of my future, the uncertainty of having to not come home to my kids was, every night was killing me. It in certain situations that happened later on before the divorce was final even made it even worse. I was not in a good place. I was not mentally dealing with the situation, with what happened, or my change in situation very well. So I was in a very negative, very dark, very, dark, depressed state is the best way to describe what I was feeling and what I was going through. So my mindset sucked. My mindset was complete trash. So I think that played a big part in several things. Now, if you've listened to me in the past, mindset's big. I've always told and expressed my opinion that your mindset will affect you as a paranormal investigator. It will affect the activity you experience. So after reflecting on the situation and coming to some answers, I think there's possible two reasons why I had that reaction to it. The first one, which I think I want to lean towards that a little bit more than the second one, but I can't throw the second one out completely. But the first one is I was reacting to the rationalization that I was alone. There was nobody there. And I think the fear of my subconscious thinking this is how you're going to die alone. You've lost everything. You've lost your family. Your world is caving in. If you would pass away this night, if there was a ghost there that came and, dropped the television on your head, it could be days before anybody find you. You are actually alone. You have nothing. You have nobody because you're in a house that things have been separated. You don't have all the stuff you used to have. It's emptier than it should be. The energy is completely changed, and things just aren't normal. You haven't adapted to that situation. And that was my thought. I am going to be alone. And I think that plays a little bit into my reaction, that I didn't consciously think this, but I think subconsciously that was in me, in my head, and the experience just magnified it, and that was the cause of the emotion that I was feeling. Now I know that's not true. That was a irrational way of thinking, but I'm not the most rational person, especially in traumatic times. I don't think any of us are, but I think that is part of it. Now, the second thing it could have been, and which really is going to go to the mindset, is like I said, I was negative. I was not in a good place mentally. The atmosphere had changed in the room, the energy had changed in the home. Possibly, it is very possible that change in energy, my change in attitude, the energy I was projecting, could have brought something a little bit darker, a little bit more sinister into the home. Now, it's from my experiences there in the past and continued on through the years. I lived in that place up until 2018. Actually, 2019. Beginning part of 2019, I moved out to my current residence. I'd had activity all along. It was hot or cold. It was, it wasn't every day. There was times where it was really thick and very frequent, but it was somewhat consistent, you know. But when I sit back and think about it, at that time, that place was, or that place, I guess probably still is, I don't know, is kind of a beacon. It is kind of a thin spot, if you will. I'm not a big believer in the thin spot between, or the thinning of the veil concept, but I do think certain locations are more ripe or more open to um, activity, to the paranormal, just for the fact of the energy in that atmosphere of not necessarily the building, but the land or whatever. So I think energy plays a big part of it, and I think that place was ripe for it. So almost like a magnet, or almost like a lighthouse. And maybe the negativity in my life at the time, the negativity in my brain, the troubles I was having mentally, the emotional issues I was having because of the drastic change in life, could have drawn something in, could have just brought something through, let something through that was a little bit more just evil. I'm not going to say demonic, but something a little darker, something a little more evil, because it was attracted to the energy of the location, the energy of the house, and my negativity. It just was the perfect storm. And so something knew that this place, or this area, was ripe for activity, and it was just drawn to it because of my negativity. That is very possible. And that would, if I'm being honest, explain some of my emotions at that time, because that's not me. I don't, really get. I've been on people who have investigated with me. I've been in some weird situations. I've been touched. I've been pushed. I've been scratched, and I just kind of go flow and try to be more rational about it. Not rational, but open to the fact that I don't know what's going on, but I'm not going to freak out, because I firmly believe you freak out, that makes it worse. It's like a bully. If you, or somebody that picks on you or gives you a hard time, the more they know it gets to you, the more they're going to do it. So I kind of take that approach with investigating, with dealing with the paranormal. I don't try not to let anything get to me. I try to be cool, calm, and collective, and not really stress out or freak out. But I did that time. So maybe it was something darker. Maybe it was my emotions, or weaker emotional state. I couldn't handle the darker energy that was there. I mean, it's very possible. And what kind of, I think it's a combination of the two, if I'm being honest. My fear that my life was changing, I was going to die alone, and a darker energy. You put those two together, and I think that might be the real answer to the question of what it was, or why I had the reaction I did. I think they both contributed to that. And I think that, and one reason why I think, there was something else there, something had came to that home that wasn't there before, maybe, is because in that time frame, activities was spiking. It was ramped up. It was much more uh, prevalent. I would have, I'd be laying in my actual bedroom, not the spare bedroom, which ended up being, the original studio at that house. I was laying in my bedroom, and I would see balls of light, different colored light, coming through the door. I was hearing voices, and you could go outside, nothing. Knocks, bangs, more doors closing, getting, touched, getting pulled, and getting scratched. Throughout, really, up until, the time I left. I mean, activity had kind of picked up there a little bit. I remember one time I forget what year it was. It was a year or two after. Some friend had was in going back to school, and got a digital recorder and brought it over. And we were just, turned it on, made sure it worked, and we were just kind of horsing around with it, making little recordings. And we played it back, and there was a blatant EVP. You couldn't really hear what it said or make out what it said very clearly, but it was a deep, almost evil, sinister voice. And I was like, whoa, jeez, that's a little weird. But you'd hear voices, and you'd go outside and walk around, and there was nobody walking by, no dogs, because, there were people walking dogs from time to time up and down the street. But strange things happened, and it just seemed to escalate. So, did my negative mental state, because my mental state in that time frame, I was going through a lot. Things happened in the divorce with kids and things that I did not handle well, and I got progressively worse. 2010 to 2012, 2013, 2004. I don't want to say 2000, about 2013. I was not in a good place, and activity really was prevalent in the time frame. So, did my mental state, did my mindset open the door or attract more things and more negative energies in that house? I think there is something to it. I'm not going to say it's foolproof, it's 100% accurate, but I think our energy does affect the paranormal, and nothing affects our energy more than our mindset. So if you've listened to me in the past, I preach about mindset. You need to be in a good mindset when you go on an investigation. You can't have a lot of negative thoughts. If you're going through a stressful time in your life, might not be the best time to do a paranormal investigation. And if you are actually experiencing stuff in your home, take notes or take a journal. Write down your thoughts at the time and really analyze what's going on. Is there some kind of common denominator there with your mental state at the time and the activity you're experiencing? Because when I firmly and truly believe that negative attracts negative. So if you're having negative thoughts, if you are in a dark place, you're going to attract darker energy, darker spirits, if you will. I mean, we can get into demons and all that stuff, but I just firmly and totally believe that the worse your mindset is, the more negative you are, the more negative or more open you are to more negative and possibly sinister stuff. That is, there's no way for me to prove it, but I think that is really what it is, or what can happen. And when you're investigating a place with an abundance of activity, or a high profile place that, like a prison or a hospital that's already emotionally charged, and if you bring your baggage into it, it could stir things up that you might not be ready for, you might not be able to handle. Because that is definitely always a possibility when you go into the paranormal field, or you're actually starting to do some investigation. You need to be aware that you can come across things, you can get things, attachments. A lot of people use the word attachments, but things can be attracted to you that might not be good. You might be opening yourself up for a problem, especially if you are a negative person, if you are going through a hard time. It might be a better idea just to sit it out and wait till you're in a better state of mind. Wait till things are going a little bit better for you, because there always is that possibility. I mean, we can talk possession, or just a standard attachment, and it can escalate. It can make make your life almost unbearable. But if you're in a positive place, I truly believe that the negative things in the spirit world, or in the other dimension, or whatever you want to believe, we can debate that another day. But if you're in a positive place, they're not going to, that more darker stuff isn't going to be attracted to you. I think they feed off the negative. Darker energy feeds off a darker mindset, and the worse off you are, the more energy it gains. And just like I talked about when I was a child, how did my the situations that arose in my childhood, was it because of the darker atmosphere brought about from what was going on, or did that darker energy, or did something come in and cause that darker energy, or caused or highlighted some of the bad stuff that happened in the home? That's the $1 million question. But I think the best way to approach it, if you're going to start investigating, is to just try to be positive. Don't investigate when you're had a bad day or if you're frustrated about something. Try to be in the best possible mood. And if you're in a home that is experiencing activity, the worse you get, it might attract something darker. So work on yourself. Do whatever makes you happy. Try to be in a good place when you're at the home and project that positive energy the best you can to try to repel or push away anything that might be hanging around that's a little bit darker. These are all theories. This is my theory. It's not my theory. Other people have expressed this as well, but I think there's some validity to it. I think this is very important. Your mindset is one of the most important things when it comes to investigating or how you interact with the paranormal. You need to be positive. If you're negative, you're just opening yourself up to a can of worms. So that is going to wrap up episode or part 2 of How to Investigate the Paranormal. The next episode, I don't know exactly when I'm going to release it. I have not recorded it yet, naturally, but I'm going to talk more about the equipment version of it. We're actually going to get into a little bit of investigating and how to actually investigate when you go on an investigation, some of the procedures, some of the things you should keep in mind about equipment, about how to conduct yourself, about how to act, or that is, how to conduct yourself is how to act. A little redundant there. But, just when you're investigating, some best practices. So that is what's going to be in part 3 of How to Investigate the Paranormal. I've kind of taken the week off here with, the election that has happened here in the U.S., trying to see that cluster of an event that we are dealing with here and all the stuff that's going along with it. So I kind of took last week off a little bit and didn't do a lot of recording, didn't really do a lot of social media work. I've kind of been AWOL for a while, but I'm getting back to it. I'm going to get back to the live streaming or live show on Sundays. So be on the lookout for that. I do that on Facebook. Just follow me on Facebook at Ghost in the Night. And when I do go live, it'll be from there. I might actually, this upcoming Sunday, try to add YouTube on that and live stream from both. That way, kind of maybe get more people to watch it there. I think I like doing the live shows. But the way I've done them in the past is done them on Sunday and not release them until like Thursday. I'm going to definitely try to, do them on Sunday and release them Monday, Tuesday, and not make people wait till Thursday, and then still do a Thursday or Friday podcast. So, like I said in the last episode, I'm going to try to do 2 podcasts a week. It's not going to be guaranteed given every, set your watch by, but I do want to do that more often than not. But I'm still going to do the live episodes on Sunday. I generally do them at 8 o'clock, but I'm thinking about bumping that up to maybe 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock. Haven't finalized it really yet. I just give me an extra hour to get it out, hopefully on Monday. I think that's, would better serve the audio listeners and the people who check it out while I actually do it live. So if you want to join, you can follow me on Facebook, like I said, Ghost of the Night, or go to Ghost of the Night. I think it's youtube.com/Ghost of the Night. Be sure to subscribe there. Be sure to, I would greatly appreciate it if, however you take in the podcast, especially if you take it in via a podcast player or a podcast app on your phone, be sure to subscribe, be sure to rate it, let people know what you think. Don't be afraid to reach out to me. I love to hear from you guys. Tell me like I said earlier, tell me the most terrifying experience you've come across, whether it be on an investigation or just in a house that you live in or lived in at one time that was active. I'm fascinated by those kind of stories. I just love to hear them. So be sure to reach out that way and let me know your stories. If you have an idea for an episode, you have a story, I'd love to hear it. Maybe we'll highlight it and cover it on an episode. So let me know about that. Or if you just have a general idea about the topic you want to talk about, or want me to talk about, or want to cover, I'd love to hear it. I'm going to kind of dive a little bit more into, in future episodes, into, more cryptids, more paranormal things, because paranormal is so much more than just a spirit world or ghost world or the afterlife. I think, people kind of get, when they hear paranormal, they automatically think ghost. It's everything. It's anything we don't understand when it comes to the supernatural, to ghosts, to cryptids, to possible extraterrestrial life, to the UFO phenomenon. We don't understand it. It all falls into the paranormal, and I firmly believe in some way, shape, or form, these are actually all connected in a certain way. And I'm going to kind of move a little bit more into those. I have, some ideas for episodes, especially, when it comes to trying to answer some questions and throw out some theories. But like I said, I do have at least 2 more episodes of, I think, the How to Investigate the Paranormal. It's going to be kind of the actual nuts and bolts of an investigation next on part 3, with equipment and how to conduct yourself. But that is going to wrap up this episode. Thank you so much for taking time to check out this podcast. Be sure to follow on social media. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just reach out. I greatly appreciate it. And I think that's going to wrap it up. Until next week, take care, everybody.